Hey, have you heard about Anchor? It's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that let you record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, just like I'm doing now. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so you can hear it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership, and it's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Welcome to Journey to Esquire, the podcast. I'm Jocelyn Hardrick, founder and president of Diversity Access Pipeline, Inc., the company behind this podcast and other great programs. Journey to Esquire Scholarship and Leadership Program provides $2,000 cash scholarships to third-year law students and internships to second-year law students, along with leadership, training, and mentors. Journey to Esquire, the blog, provides insightful articles to help navigate you through law school and beyond. Find out more on our website, www.journeytoesquire.com. So welcome to Journey to Esquire, the podcast. I'm your host, Jocelyn Hardrick, founder and president of Diversity Access Pipeline, Inc., the nonprofit behind this program and others like the blog and our scholarship and leadership program. Share, like, subscribe, follow us on social media, and welcome to another episode. This is another in our series of interviews with our board members, and I'm so excited today to introduce to you to Brielle F. Bell, who used to be Brielle Tucker. She recently got married to another one of our alums, Justin Bell. And so she's going to talk a little bit about that. But before we get into our interview, let me tell you a little bit about Miss Bell. She's an associate at Bush Ross, PA, and she practices bankruptcy and commercial litigation. So Brielle represents debtors, creditors, and trustees in Chapter 11 and 13 reorganizations and Chapter 7 liquidations. She also represents parties in all aspects of litigation in federal and state courts, including professional liability. Prior to joining the board, Brielle was one of the inaugural scholars of the Diversity Access Pipeline program. She graduated cum laude from Stetson University College of Law and competed on the Moot Court board and Stetson trial team. While at Stetson, Brielle interned with the Honorable Charlene E Honeywell in the Middle District of Florida, and in 2018, she became Miss JD Fellow. She has since clerked with the Honorable Roberta A. Colton in the U.S. Bankruptcy Court, Middle District of Florida. And we're so excited to have her here today as a board member, becoming Belle, and we're talking about all the new great things that's going into her life. Welcome, Brielle.
I'm happy to be here, Jocelyn. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So let's talk about the nuptials a little bit. And we're just talking about changing the name and what that's like, because you got your degree and you got your license under your maiden name, and now you have a new name. What is that experience like for you?
I'm still getting used to it. I love the fact that, there's some alliteration there. So it's Brielle Bell. And Justin and I have this running joke a little bit that I've always been a Belle because Bell has always been in my name, being Brielle.
Oh, that's so cute. You two are so cute. And if I could share a little, take a little point of privilege, when you were a scholar in the program, we did these interviews live. And I remember you and Justin were dating at the time. And I watched him watching you doing the interview. And I knew in that moment you two were getting married.
Yeah.
I'm like, this man don't know what is happening to him. He didn't see this coming. He is done. This is it for him. But it's so, it reminded me of, when me and my husband met, we fell in love, but it's so nice to watch that experience happening. And he was so impressed with everything that you were doing. It was just such a great moment. I wish I could have caught it on camera, but I wanted to be discreet. But now that it's happened, I can talk about it. So let's dive into your story. You have such a great story, such great experiences. Let's go all the way back to when you decided to become a lawyer.
Well, it's funny. I really don't have a moment. I know a lot of people, they have a story of, they saw a lawyer or on TV or in real life, or they have a situation that they were challenged by the legal system. I actually wanted to be a cop believe it or not. I wanted to be a detective. Yeah. So I was fascinated as a young child with puzzles and a lot of the shows that probably a 10 or 12-year-old shouldn't watch, like CSI, all those shows. But my mom and I, that's how we bonded. And I always knew that when I grew up, I would be a detective. I would have a problem, someone will come to me and they'll say, I have an issue, I need you to help. And I would get my investigator hat on and go interview and, just do all these things to just eventually figure out how we can solve the issue. And once I got into University of Tampa, I attended a course or participated in a course called, I think it was called appellate advocacy back then, but essentially it was our oral argument Moot court styled course. And I would compete. And when I did that, a lot of the judges would be actual litigators, so attorneys, judges, what have you. And one time, an actual sitting judge told me when I was an undergrad, you're very articulate, you should really go to law school. And I think at this point I was in my junior year of college. And I still wanted to be a cop. I was crim major, doing all the internships, everything. And at that point I said, you know what, maybe I should just try to look into law school. So I started doing tours, started looking at LSAT, things of that nature. And then it clicked finally that those same passions that drew me to being a detective or wanting to be a law enforcement agent, I could still have with the law. So in my current practice, whether it's bankruptcy, professional liability, or what have you, any type of litigation matter, there is a client that's coming to us and they do have a problem and they do expect us to do interviews, whether it's depositions or, just research in Westlaw and figure out how to answer those problems. So I think that's my story in a nutshell.
Nice. Yeah, I love the detective aspect of what we get to do. And my husband says that you should have been a detective because you notice everything and you pick up clues. But I said, jails and all that, I don't know. Even though I did want to be a criminal defense attorney, it didn't end up happening. But the law definitely gives you the opportunity to do all those things you just described. And so you said you were at the University of Tampa. What's interesting is I know someone who teaches that class now at UT.
No kidding.
He's been interviewed on this podcast and he's a friend of the program. So junior year, you're hearing about this. You said you looked into the LSAT and some school tours. Talk a little bit more about your law school application process.
So I knew at the time that I loved Florida. I'm from Washington, D.C. originally. And, while D.C. is great and it has so much history there and to be a lawyer in D.C., I'm sure it's a phenomenal, privilege. I knew I wanted to stay in Florida. So I decided that I was only going to apply to Florida schools, and to appease my parents, I did apply to one law school in DC. And so my process was essentially just looking online. I was working full time with Robert Half during the time that I was applying for law school. So I did take a gap year. And that process was essentially just trying to figure out the best fit. So luckily for me, during that time at UT, University of Tampa, I was able to make connections with faculty and current students at Stetson. So Stetson became my number one, and I love the Tampa Bay area. So the process essentially was studying, how can I get prepared? So I took a course through Kaplan to study for that LSAT. I actually took the LSAT twice. And funny enough, this is a funny story that I love sharing now. I got the same score in the LSAT both times, and wasn't the best score. In hindsight, it was a score. And I remember writing on my personal statement or a supplementary aspect of my applications and saying, at least one thing is I'm consistent. And I do believe that might have helped open some doors for me. And, eventually I got into Stetson. I did have a scholarship to attend there as well. So that helped, was one of my deciding factors, of course, that they helped financially. And so that was my story.
Oh, wow. I was going to take it a second time and I was like, I bet I'm going to get the same score. So let me just work with what I got. Because I took Kaplan also. And,
wow.
but mine was like in 2002. It was a while ago. And so they've changed since then. But, sometimes those tests are supposed to be a measure of something, of a specific skill set, but it's grown over time to mean so much more. And I think there is a movement to try to de-emphasize test scores, because it was only supposed to predict your potential performance in your first year. And now it's like whether you get in or not to a law school, So I know you were very busy when you were in law school, trial team, Moot court, those things are time consuming, and you volunteered and did 100 things. Talk to us about whether you enjoyed law school and what that experience was like.
I did enjoy law school. I do think, was I too busy? Maybe, in some areas. But while I was at UT, I was also busy. I was in a sorority, I was in our admissions office giving tours. I had a full-time job, or it felt like a full-time job. So I worked every semester. So it was weird going into law school and not, juggling. So I needed to stay busy because it, for some reason, just keeps me focused to have a full planner. So I truly enjoyed law school. I mean, the first semester was weird. I remember, the whole cold calling aspect and feeling like when people would give answers, oh, that was absolutely the best answer. No one could top that answer, And so I had that hesitation to respond when I was cold called. And I was happy and shocked at the same time when first semester grades came out and I had performed better than I expected, because I remember going into exams really hoping I did enough studying, but feeling really like imposter syndrome. Like, why am I here? In class, everyone gave such profound answers. Like, I can't top that. What is this exam that is my entire grade? So after I received my grades, I had that confidence shift that I needed to feel like, okay, now that I can do this, how can I continue to do this and bring in my passions of, being busy, if you will. So in my second year, that's when I became a mentor. So I assisted new first year students. And, that whole process was fun because I, at that point, loved Stetson and I just wanted everybody to love Stetson. So I would give tours, and then some of the students, prospective students that I gave tours to, by my third year, they would be 1Ls and they would remember me. So it was, it was a fun, full circle type experience there. And of course, I loved speaking. As the judge said back in UT, I'm very articulate. So of course, I tried out for Moot court as well as trial team, expecting and hoping to get on one board, but being blessed and fortunate enough to be able to advocate on both. So it was truly a great experience.
Yeah, I mean, when we interviewed you, I remember Judge McEwen was on that committee. Our first inaugural year, Jamila Little, who's a current board member, they were very, very impressed with you. Almost to the extent of like, does she even need this program? I'm like, hey, yeah, because when someone's great, we want to push them to get greater. And look at you already doing great things. We're going to go into that in a little bit. But let's go back to, okay, you're in law school. We actually met when you were interning for Judge Honeywell because I was her law clerk at the time. So let's talk about what the job search was after law school, or during law school, I guess, for you, because we had another thing in common.
That we do. I'm learning, we speak all the time, but I didn't realize we had so much in common. So it's funny. So many of the opportunities that I had, I would say, come from being at the right place, the right time. So in law school, you'll learn that every meeting happens at lunchtime, and typically there's always food. So on this particular day, I did not bring lunch and I was hungry. So I saw on the docket says big law clerkship panel or something like that, or something like summer associate panel, something like that. So I was like, you know what, let's just go, free food. And it happens to be like tacos, and I love tacos. So I went and I'm just listening to these former summer associates who interned or were summer associates at larger firms talk about their experiences, and they had callbacks, and I'm like, what's a callback? And that they applied for their job like after their first summer, and then like, got it their next summer. And I was just like, what is happening? So luckily enough, one of the students that was on that panel actually also attended UT with me, and he was actually in appellate advocacy with me. So I knew him very well. So I went up to him, Rob, what is this? Like, what's a summer associate? How can I do this? So he told me the process, and that summer I was working, but I decided, you know what, let me just take a stab at it. So I decided to apply for summer associate positions. I got my resume together. I, just got my writing sample together, which was, I believe at the time, a memo for first year law school. And I just sent it out. And by God's grace, I was able to get an interview to a few firms. And then that experience was nerve-wracking because it felt like I was deciding the rest of my life. And ultimately, I did interview with Bush Ross during my 1L summer going into my 2L year, had the call back with them, and I felt like that would be a really good fit for me for what I was looking for. And so I started at Bush Ross right after law school, right after taking the bar. And then I just got the opportunity to go clerk, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah, so while you were interning, I said, hey, what are your plans for next summer? You're like, well, I'm going to this place called Bush Ross. I said, oh, I came from a place called Bush Ross. And so I said, we got to talk, let me tell you how to leverage this summer associate, opportunity, because I was there as a summer associate and then received an offer and ended up working there. Feels like forever ago now, but it was like 2009 to 2013-ish. And so I was just like, well, God must be working some miracles, because we're just ending up in the right place at the right time to put this law student, in my path who I can help. And so it ended up being great. So what, explain to students how you kind of choose your area of practice, because you went from wanting to do criminal work, now you're at a big firm doing bankruptcies and litigation and professional liability. What was that process like?
I wish I could tell you that I chose the type of area of law that I wanted to do. I don't think I did or have even, I knew what I loved and what I was passionate about was truly problem solving. If it's a jigsaw, I want to be able to put it back together, and fortunately that encompasses pretty much any practice area. So I really wasn't picky, and I knew I wanted to litigate. Like I knew I wanted to assist, be on two sides. There's an adversary, I wanted to do that. For me, I would say bankruptcy found me. I did not find bankruptcy. I actually did not take bankruptcy in law school, and I knew it was an area that applied to everything, So I was like, you know what, let me just try it, and I have grown to love it. But if I was talking to a student right now and they were unsure of what they wanted to do, my first advice would be don't limit yourself. Do not think that because you've never done it or you've never experienced it that you will not like it. A lot of the things that we grow to love is honestly just a step of faith. And you just take that leap of faith and you experience it. And if there's one thing that you will take away from it, you will figure out if you do like it or if you don't like it. And ultimately, that's still an answer. And so I would just tell a law student, take the class, try the internship. If you meet someone and you say, hey, it's really cool that you're a tax attorney. Have you ever considered, taking on an intern? Consider that, because you never know where those opportunities will lead you, and you never want to close the door. And it's funny, I don't think I ever really knew if I would ever be a criminal defense attorney or, a prosecutor or anything like that, even though I was a criminology major. But what I did learn in law school is that family law and criminal law, I thought that because I love people so much, I wouldn't be able to go home and not think about it. So, I did figure that out early on in law school as well. But every experience that you have, just always know that you can there is a takeaway from it.
Yes, that's so true. That answered our next question, which was advice for new and future law students. And so let's go back a little bit to bankruptcy. You said you didn't really choose it, it kind of chose you, and you had another opportunity when you clerked for Judge Colton. Talk about that a little bit.
I did. So we mentioned Judge McEwen a few moments ago. And so the experience to clerk, it also chose me. It was, like I said, right place, right time. I was attending a hall luncheon, so Hillsborough Association for Women Lawyers. I was at a luncheon and I was just, in the crowd listening. And I look over and I see Judge McEwen. So I'm like, hey, Judge. And she says, I need to talk to you. So if you're listening on a podcast, essentially she mouths, I need to talk to you. And so I said, okay, I knew Judge from Journey to Esquire, DAP. So I was just going to come up and speak with her afterwards. And so I go up to her after the luncheon. Hey, Judge, how's it going? I'm at Bush Ross, bankruptcy, still getting my feet wet with it. And she says, I have an opportunity and it made me think of you. There's another judge who needs a temporary law clerk just for a few months. And I thought because you're just now getting experience with bankruptcy, it may be a really good fit for you if your firm will allow it. And so that pretty much opened the door for the conversation. So then, with my firm's blessing, we went back and forth a little bit to just see, what would this experience provide me. I spoke with my mentors, Jocelyn included, and let them know like, hey, I have this opportunity. It's not a full year clerkship, but it would provide me with a foot in the door or, just the ability to just see how does federal law work? How does bankruptcy work? What does it mean to be a law clerk, and just essentially to help a judge, and so with all of those thoughts in mind and armed with the support of my firm, I did decide to go clerk. So I started in November of 2019. So only 2 months after starting at the firm, I went to go clerk and I was there through April of 2020. And we know the world was changed, in April of 2020, but it was honestly life-changing, career-altering. If you are ever given an opportunity, if you're ever even considering clerking, just know that what we think of a law clerk in law school is not a judicial law clerk. A judicial law clerk you can think of is kind of like a right-hand man. Your job is to make the judge look good. And when you are behind the scenes, you learn so much about, how the court operates. You learn about, what is really good writing, what is not so great writing, how a judge thinks, what's important, and then at that time we were still seeing in-person court appearances, so you kind of got to see other attorneys swag and, it was just such a cool outlook and perspective. I was literally in court pretty much not every day, but definitely every week. And so it was just cool. In my first year practicing, I was able to get the behind the scenes look. So I truly enjoyed the experience. And I'm glad that I was able to start my legal career off that way.
Yeah, that's excellent. Journey to Esquire has the mission of increasing diversity in big law firms and judicial clerkships because they are usually very tough to get, a lot of competition. And so you got to get in early sometimes, but other times you're like us, you're just right place, right time, and it works out. So now let's talk about, why you decide to join the board. You 19, you're entering your third year of law school, you see an announcement about this random program you never heard of, about someone you never heard of, and then now, you're on the board. Talk to us about what made you decide to join the board.
So if you are listening to this podcast and you actually, this is your first opportunity and your first outlook into Journey to Esquire Diversity Access Pipeline, I want you to know that the passion behind this program is so real. I remember when Jocelyn told me about this program, I was a law student, and you came to me and you said, hey, look, I'm passionate about assisting people like us to get to where I am. And I was like, wow, that is exactly what I need, And it was one of those things where in my life, I realized that I'm only where I am because someone else allowed me to be here, and oftentimes there were people who looked like me, but sometimes there were people who didn't look like me. And in order for me to reach back and bring someone who looks like me up, I have to be in those positions, you know? And so the organization and, you know, the reason why I'm here and the reason why I wanted to be on the board is because I want to see the mission thrive. You know, I really truly believe that we are lacking diversity in big law. You know, I do believe that we're lacking it in our court system, on the judiciary. If I could just be frank a little bit, we look out for one another. And the reality is, if we are not in positions at the table, then we cannot bring new seats to the table. And so this organization allows that mission to thrive. You know, since being on the board, I've been able to assist with getting the word out, you know, and allowing law students at Stetson and even Cooley, you know, to know that there is an organization out there. You know, you don't have to do this alone. If you don't have a mentor, we can help you find a mentor, whether you're a scholar or a participant, you know, and that's the beauty of it. You know, there has not been one event since joining Journey to Esquire, whether as a scholar or as a board member, where someone has not asked me, oh, I've seen you're in Journey to Esquire. Tell me a little bit about that. You know, and this is so beautiful because I'm able to just share our mission. And for those who are not people of color, women of color, men, minorities, etc., you know, it's an opportunity as well to just be that seat at the table for someone else, because we do need our allies and we do need people to look out for us as well. And it's, you know, it's beautiful that even in this podcast, you know, this is just days after the first vice president, you know, the first time a vice president is a minority. Like, what? You know, we are definitely making strides, and she's a lawyer, you know, so look, we can help make the next Kamala Harris. So that's just my thoughts on it. But
I think we're looking at the next one, actually.
Oh, Jocelyn, I'm so proud of you.
We're looking at the next one, but yeah, that's exciting. So, yeah. So we're happy to have you on the board, of course. Because our mission is to help law students. And so we want recent law students, recent law grads. We're searching for board members now. And so we're excited to have you part of that process. And thank you so much for joining us. This has been such a nice interview. And this is your second interview. You did one when you were a scholar. And the story is slightly different and it has more layers now. And so I'm so excited to see what the future holds for you.
Thank you. I'm excited as well. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
Right. Thank you, Brielle Bell. And thank you to everyone for listening and joining this latest episode of Journey to Esquire, the podcast. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. And for more, go to journeytoesquire.com. Thanks for tuning in to another great episode of Journey to Esquire, the podcast. Support, share, subscribe. And for more, visit www.journeytoesquire.com.